Around 5,000 years ago, in the early Bronze Age, the world crossed one of the most important thresholds in human history. Communities were no longer just villages. They were becoming structured societies with leaders, skilled workers, trade networks, and growing populations. With these developments came a transformation in the nature of conflict. Disputes that once involved a few families now involved entire settlements. The stakes were higher, the pressure was greater, and the consequences of losing control over land or resources became far more serious than ever before. Bronze technology changed everything. For the first time, humans had tools and weapons that were stronger, sharper, and more durable than stone. This new material required mining, smelting, crafting, and trade, creating a chain of industries that connected distant regions. Communities with access to bronze gained a clear advantage, and those without it struggled to compete. As these inequalities grew, so did tensions. Groups that lacked bronze tools feared being overtaken. Groups that possessed them feared losing what made them powerful. This silent competition created an atmosphere in which even peaceful societies had to prepare for the possibility of conflict. Leadership during this era also became more centralized. Instead of temporary guides chosen during emergencies, societies developed permanent leadership roles: chiefs, elders, councils, and eventually early kings. These leaders were responsible not only for daily life, but for the safety, stability, and success of the entire community. Their decisions carried weight far beyond a single moment. A wrong choice could cause famine. A poor judgment could lead to attack. Leaders learned to think strategically, weighing risks and benefits in ways that shaped the earliest forms of governance. Their ability to guide people in times of danger became a key factor in whether a society thrived or collapsed. Trade routes expanded dramatically during this era. Period. Goods traveled from rivers to deserts, mountains to coastlines, linking cultures that previously had no contact. These routes brought new ideas, technologies, and opportunities, but they also introduced conflict. A group that controlled a trade route gained wealth, influence, and respect. A group without access to trade struggled to develop. As a result, entire regions competed for control of critical pathways, from narrow mountain passes to fertile river valleys. Controlling a trade route could secure prosperity for generations, while losing it could mean decline. These high stakes turned trade into one of the earliest motivations for organized conflict. Another key transformation came in the form of permanent architecture. Cities began to emerge, built from stone and mud brick, protected by walls, gates, and towers. These early fortifications were more than just defenses. They were symbols of stability and strength. They demonstrated a city's ability to protect its people and resources. But they also signaled something else. A community that built walls expected danger. This expectation created a psychological shift. People began to view their cities not just as homes, but as territories worth defending with their lives. The meaning of conflict changed from short-term disputes to long-term struggles for security. At the same time, writing and record-keeping began to appear in different parts of the world. Although still in its earliest stages, writing allowed leaders to record agreements, track resources, and organize labor. But it also introduced something new to conflict: planning. With written records, societies could store information about enemies, strategies, and events. They could learn from past mistakes and prepare for future challenges. This ability to document information marked one of the greatest leaps forward in human conflict, transforming battles from unpredictable reactions into calculated decisions. Population growth continued to add pressure. As cities expanded, they required more farmland, more water, and more trade goods. When resources ran short, leaders faced difficult choices: relocate, negotiate, or expand. Negotiation worked at times, but when diplomacy failed, expansion became the only option. Expansion often led into the territory of another group, and this contact, whether peaceful or tense, became the spark for many early conflicts. These interactions were not always driven by aggression. Sometimes they were simply driven by necessity. but necessity can be as powerful as intention. The emotional fabric of human society was also evolving. People developed stronger connections to their cities, symbols, and traditions. Festivals, rituals, and shared stories unified communities, creating a deep sense of belonging. But these bonds also made people more protective and more sensitive to threats. When two groups with strong identities encountered each other, trust was difficult to build. Misunderstandings became easy. And suspicion became common. Even peaceful societies struggled to form lasting relationships across cultural boundaries. By this stage, nearly every element needed for organized warfare was in place: technology, leadership, strategy, alliances, competition, identity, and territory. The world was ready for conflicts far greater than anything seen before. But despite all this complexity, the core motivations behind these early struggles remained the same. People sought safety, resources, identity, and a future for their children. These universal concerns shaped every decision, every alliance, and every confrontation. And through them, humanity began to understand that conflict, though tragic, was an unavoidable part of a world filled with ambition, fear, and hope. The journey from simple disputes to organized warfare was gradual, shaped not by a single invention, but by centuries of human adaptation. Each discovery, each innovation, and each challenge added a new layer to the story. And as civilizations rose and fell, the lessons of these early struggles were carried forward, hidden within the actions of future nations and leaders. In understanding how war began, we understand something deeper about ourselves, our strengths, our fears, and the choices we make when our world begins to shift.